before I jump into some simple things? No? Okay, great. So I want to, the rest of the class, I want to talk about solar cookers actually. So I like them. They're really simple. But before we do this, I want to say, make a little plug for why develop technologies for developing world. Personally, I'm interested in this primarily because it allows a set of constraints that as engineers or engineers in the developed world don't really think about, but allows you a really interesting way to think about these problems. So something to keep in mind. Again, these are optional, but I just want to make a plug for it. There are huge solar resources in the developing world where there are low access to electricity, water, and things like that, roads, right? Biomass resources are very fast depleting. Biomass, of course, what most people on this planet use for cooking. And that's a huge problem with CO2 emissions, right? Electricity and water are not accessible. So this, as I said before, and there are huge market opportunities. There is a reason why Google and Facebook are trying to get the vast swaths of this planet on the internet, or SpaceX for that matter, with Starlink, right? There's a huge market opportunity there as well, something to keep in mind. So it doesn't have to be completely driven by charity, let's say. Okay, now let's jump into solar cooking. I like solar cooking, as I said before, because it's extremely simple. So what does that mean? What is solar cooking? So I know most of you know what it is, but I'm gonna play a quick video. I don't know if it'll play. I'm gonna stay away from there. So this is an example. Actually, I'm gonna cut this side. It's an example, so I'm not endorsing the product, but it's an example of something that exists out there. It's really small, light. It has a vacuum seal tube, right? It's transparent. There's a black body for heat absorption. And you have this reflector that allows you to track the sun. These are all things we'll talk about in this class. And you can do all kinds of cool stuff with it, right? I haven't used it myself, but it looks really good. So I'll let it play through so you get an idea of what exists. You can even boil water, which is, of course, quite important if you're hiking. I assume some of you at least are outdoors enthusiasts. Has anyone used solar cookers? Okay. Okay. So I have actually used this type of solar cooking, but by putting things inside hot sand. So if you're on a beach in the summer, it gets really, really hot. You can actually cook roast nuts and things like that. I've done this myself, but it can get really hot. So what is a solar cooker? So this is a box cooker. It's very simple. I think many of you have built this in middle school. My daughter actually built this, I think, a couple of years ago. She was probably in elementary school. Basically an enclosure with the saran wrap. So it allows light in, but traps heat, longer wavelengths of light. And you have a black body that absorbs the heat. And it's also conductive, so it can conduct the heat to the whatever's inside, right? This one has a reflector as well, so it can reflect light in, increases the aperture size. Simple construction. There's slow, even cooking, safe, easy to use. They also come in other flavors. There's something called the panel cooker. There's no container. It's very simple. Reflective panels. They fold and easy for transportation. However, they're unstable in high winds. Doesn't retain heat when cloudy. The thermal mass is low. You can have something called a parabolic cooker, which is, of course, a parabola, as we know from high school, has a focus where all the straight lines will come to a focus. So that means you can collect a lot of the sunlight, the solar concentrator, onto a point. Because you're collecting light over a large aperture, you end up with very, very high temperature. So it can cook very quickly. It's very complex and expensive. It can cause fires, though. importantly, this has to track the sun. As the sun moves, the focal point will shift, so you have to track. So now, one of the things we're going to do in this class is we're going to take a break, because I don't want to be talking the whole time and you fall asleep. That's one reason. The other reason, I want you to think about some of these problems. I want you, first of all, take a break and say hi to your neighbors. If you're socially distanced, that's fine. And I want you to answer this question. Spend about a minute, 60 seconds or so. Brainstorm, how would you improve these cookers?